Hi everyone, the Mature Simmer here. So, getting ready to get going in spring here, and I've got several things that are going through my head, but the first is we now have a good size seeder that doesn't require something else to get the field ready. Basically, I can plant without cultivating, which is always a blessing, especially on something this large. So that means while this Amazon served us well for getting the canola in the ground, we are going to be getting rid of it. So the first thing I need to do is unload it, and that way it's empty and I'm not selling it with product. And then I'm going to go ahead and sell it. So we are here. We're going to sell. We're going to get 117,000 for it. So it is now gone. And now I need to pick this up in a vehicle that will then let me unload it, which I believe will be that crampy trailer. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get these into the silos, and then we're going to go forward from there. Okay, so as always, a little bit of change in plans here. So I've parked the truck over there. It's got seeds in it. I've gotten those pallets off the ground. I've still got the fert, but the problem is the silo here. If you recall, this is the one when I built my yard that I went ahead and bought seed instead of transporting it, and so it is chock full of seed, and therefore I can't do anything to unload that. So I need to obviously use some seed, which, hey, it's time to plant. However, what has been introduced in FSN in the last few days, and is actually, I think, going live sometime today, and I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work, so initially I was like, well, maybe I'll hold off, but I'm all for doing some new things and kind of participating. So we have got what is known as a group project that is being launched, and it's to build the Suez Canal. And so the people on the meta side will be doing the building, but to do the building and to obviously, I assume, maybe feed the workers and so forth, they need some help from the farmers on the FSN side. And so we have been told that wheat, potatoes, and corn are crops that are going to be needed in this first phase of building the Suez Canal. There's going to be multiple phases. We don't know what they'll be or how many there are. We just know that this is the first one. So that then takes me to my crop calendar. If I choose to grow wheat, I basically would be waiting all the way till the fall to plant, and then waiting all the way around to the year to harvest. So certainly, while it's possible, we wouldn't have any activity on the farm for a long, long time. But on the other hand, we certainly know how to handle that. We've got the equipment to handle it. The next one, corn, I can't plant till tomorrow. I've got to go ahead and do some things as far as getting a corn header and so forth if I was to do that. So that's certainly a possibility. If I want to do something today, which I would prefer, I can do potatoes. And I'm also thinking, frankly, because potatoes are very time consuming, we're going to have less people doing potatoes. Because potatoes are time consuming, I'm worried I'm going to regret my decision, but at this point, that's what I'm going to go ahead and do, is I'm going to focus on potatoes. And so we had talked about the possibility of doing that at some point. And the other added benefit we have is we're going to have an earlier harvest season for that. But certainly that's going to require the largest investment. So prior to starting up this episode, I did go ahead and withdraw money from the bank and put in a funds transfer to transfer an additional $1.6 million into the the server here. So that will show up over the next few days and will, if nothing else, replenish our stock. But we don't need everything right away. What we need right now is a planter that will go ahead and plant potatoes. So I'm going to go ahead and look for what I think I want to do with that. Okay, so there's really just two choices at this point for potatoes. They are a dedicated planter, so that is kind of the downside. I'm going to have a piece of equipment that's only used when I use potatoes, but I'm in a position that I can do this. And so the main difference is obviously capacity or working with. And so this is the largest one with the largest capacity. So this is what we're going to go with. So there we go. And basically the money we gained on selling the Amazon basically helps us pay for that. So it keeps our bank balance close to where we were. So we need to drive to the store and get that. So yeah, so this is a big pivot, but certainly, again, something that nobody else offers anywhere on multiplayer or anything like that, are these type of things. I mean, group projects are obviously brand new to FSN as well, so it's certainly a new idea that the team has come up with, and just another reason why it's really a fun and interesting community, because it gives us options in the simming world that just don't exist elsewhere. So, not quite sure how this is going to play out. Now, as far as quantities, and this is where I'm not seeing anything because I don't think anything's been posted, but someone else had indicated on some of the discussions that they're thinking of doing potatoes because they're assuming nobody else is going to do potatoes, which is partially why I'm also going to go ahead and do that, because obviously I can do the other crops. I've done the other crops before. I've also done potatoes, but this is going to be something that's going to take some work. And the comment that came back from the powers that be, and I'm assuming none of this is a typo, again, the Suez Canal's pretty big, but they said basically their estimate as far as needs of potatoes, of looking at how the project needs are structured, is we're going to need 56 million liters of potatoes for this first phase. So clearly that's a lot of potatoes. So even if I get, a good amount here off this field, I don't think we're going to even begin scratching the surface with my little contribution. The challenge, however, I've done some research and kind of accepted the fact of, hey, if I'm going to do potatoes, this is what we've got to do potatoes. So if you recall, what we've run into over the last few episodes is from a fill limit standpoint, there's a weight limitation as well. So the trailers that transport potatoes, and we've got one, the Crampy is the largest one that transports potatoes, and while it has good capacity, the challenge is potatoes are heavy. From a multiplier standpoint, they're 0.75 per liter, so we're going to not be filling that trailer similar to when we are using it to move supplies that are bulky and heavy as well. And as you might imagine, I mean, everyone I think is familiar with potatoes. They're not the lightest crop in the world. So I can't put them in the Wilson, which has a larger weight capacity. None of those will take potatoes. So from the root crop standpoint, we're going to have that situation ongoing. So the other thing that was intriguing is this is probably a really good, realistically, this is probably a good climate for potatoes way up here north. I think, the countries that maybe are a little more well known for potatoes and potato consumption, tend to be like Ireland, Russia. We obviously had the potato famine in Ireland. So, and they tend to be northern, a little bit further north. So, it just seemed, hey, this worked. Not that wheat or corn are necessarily things that can't grow up in Canada. I might be a little more hesitant if I'm trying to stay within the reality of where I'm at, of being asked to plant cotton. I would probably then supply some other crop. But once again, if you were with us back in Ohio, I did have both. I had equipment for cotton and I had equipment for root crops. So, the difference here right now in FS22 is the equipment is very crop specific. So I was able to have a root crop harvester, for example, in FS19 in the FSN world that would harvest all root crops, and that also included some additional fill types like onion, lettuce, red cabbage, carrots, things like that. Those things don't exist right now in FS22, but we do have sugar beets and potatoes as root crops. And if I was to go the beet route eventually, that requires a whole different set of equipment. I can't plant beets with this planter. Now I could plant beets with a planter that plants other things that I would use, so that there's a little bit of a difference there, where potatoes are just potatoes. But you're also going to have a beet harvester versus a potato harvester, because that's going to be the largest outlay we're going to have. I could do a pull behind potato harvester, but its working width is extremely small, like 1.8 meters, and its capacity then is also like 10,000 liters, where a self-propelled unit is wider. It doesn't actually give us a working width because there's a lot of other stats it shows, but it's also got a capacity of like 22,000 liters, so it's over double the capacity, and I think it has probably a good 6 meter working width or something. So it's still obviously way smaller than what we had with our header for the canola we just did, but that's just the nature of root crops because they're big and bulky. The equipment to harvest them tends to go in very small patches, and you can kind of see this is just as wide as our tractor, and that's it. So as opposed to our other seeder that we just sold with the Amazon that was 15 meters that extended out a good ways, this is kind of the challenge we're going to run into. This is going to be a time-consuming process. So obviously I'm going to show bits of it, but I am not going to give you a full episode of much of this work. I mean, at this point we've gone through the first cycle on the farm. You've seen most of this. Alright, we're going to go ahead, 8,000 liters again. So we are full. Alright, so we're dumping our seeds. Silly me, tricks are for kids. I was wrong. I had fertilizer in my truck when I went to try to empty it into the seed silo in between. I was informed of that. So again, I'm sure people were screaming at the screen saying those pallets are seeds. Look at the symbol on them. And again, as we've said, I clearly do not have the mental capacity to understand pictures because I'm always struggling with that in FSN. So hopefully I'll always be able to maintain my ability to read, because if I ever have to do things with pictures, I'm going to have a problem. That probably explains my challenge of putting together anything from IKEA. But obviously I think the world shares in my pain there. I think most people have a problem putting things together from IKEA, because I think the IKEA engineers think everybody thinks the way they do, and clearly the marketplace has proven that's not the fact. But somehow everybody decides they still need IKEA furniture in their home, and so they function as a business in some way and continue to have their insanity validated. The pictures are the best way, especially really pictures that make no sense and I think are intentionally built to make you have to assemble and disassemble the furniture 17 times before you finally figure out the right way to do it. Alright. This is very pleasant here. So let's see if I get a running start. Can I get past that little bump or whatever we have? I guess we'll find out. It looks like we can. Alright. Alright. So we're on our way. So there are potatoes ready to be planted. I always have enjoyed the potato texture in the game. I don't know about potato planting, so I don't know if it's truly what we're seeing here, where you just put raw potatoes in the ground. But I'm assuming there's some semblance of reality there. But we've got a big area to get some potatoes in. Alright, so we're unfolding the planter, getting it ready. It's tipped the potatoes forward. It's widening out some, so you can see there that, you know, we've got a little bit more width here. So I'm going to run a headland here first, because we've got like that one tree over there, so I want to go ahead and kind of get this done. I think yeah, there we go. Okay, we don't have to turn on the planter in any way. That's what I was unsure about. And this is the other piece of fun that we have. And again, this is not that I've not had experience, so sorry for the double negative, but that is accurate with potatoes. So I knew it was a heavy consumer of seeds. So that's the other thing that is going to be the reality that we have here, is we're going to be using a lot of seed. And so that may involve me getting an auger to continue keeping myself full, which I'm almost certainly going to do, I think, but we'll see, because I don't want to spend too much money on equipment that may have limited use here for the life of the farm, because for the general planting, I think I'm going to have planters that are large enough. In fact, I know I will, because the replacement for that Amazon is going to be absolutely massive, which is one of the reasons I decided to do that. But when we deal with that, we'll talk about that. And, you know, we won't necessarily need to be replenishing. I mean, part of the point of putting the yard where I did and having what we have is that we don't necessarily have to have all kinds of things to transport things too far, because everything is right here. So obviously the benefit we're getting as we do this is So yeah, I can lift the planter as I turn around. Is that because we're not fertilizing at the same time, we're not kind of running into that same issue that we had of the fert stripe. And I'm hoping that, like, once we plant, we don't have the same issue with the fert stripe anyway. But, you know, we'll go ahead and run these couple headlands and then start moving up and down. So I'll catch you at the end of the field here. So before I go and line up on the row, I wanted to take a look. This is field 10 right in front of us here. So this is the field I plowed. This is the one that we've got someone bidding on. I think, again, it's Bryce. They're Crow Creek Ranch, I believe is the name. And so someone will be doing something next door to me shortly. Alright, so I've got myself lined up here. Didn't mean to still be going backwards. So I'm going to go ahead and start planting. And obviously this edge of the field, these fields are not completely square, which is fine. They are what they are. The road's pretty close here. Our property boundary's pretty close. So one of the questions that folks might have is, well, why don't we just square it up to that edge? And the reason is because of the 5-meter easement of keeping things from roads. And obviously if the map has, you know, is created that way, because on the other side, it's possible it's 5 meters away, but obviously there's less space from the field to the road on the other side than I have here. So there is that issue potentially of encroaching on that, and for the little bit, it's not like it's going to give me a substantial amount of acreage. I mean, yes, this is a very long field boundary, and yes, we'll see how this ends up, but we may have a 6-meter difference between the positioning of the field from the north side here to the south. We're not seeing the middle line appear yet, so we're not even at the 3-meter mark, and I think this line continues up until we're basically starting to get very closer into that southern island. No, I guess it actually pops over one level here and then moves over by the time we get to the island. So, small little changes. There we go. You can see the field popped in a half row or whatever that is, but like I said, we still can't see the green dots showing up that I'm aware of, unless, there we go, now I see them in the grass. They're just finally visible once we have this next cut in. So yeah, we might just be at 6 meters at the end, because it looks like we have, what, 4 more steps? No, 3 more steps between here and the end of the field, and we might not even be that far over, because it looks like we've still got 4 rows that we're planting, because normally potatoes will be on the tops of the crests. I'm sure there's a name, and potato farmers could tell me what those things are called, but I'm no potato farmer. Well, I am now, I guess. I'm doing it. So we have officially started our second crop, potatoes, over here at Misty Hills up in Saskatchewan. So we've got canola first and potatoes. And speaking of the canola, most of that crop is sold. I think we were down to about 10,000 liters left out of the 252,000 or so that we had to start selling. So obviously the vast majority, we've got like 5% at most left to continue to sell off. So most of that money has been generated. A lot of it is obviously still sitting over on the meta side, because that's where resource exchange works. So that'll slowly transfer over. It'll start to replenish our coffers. But, we made a profit, but we didn't do exceptionally well, you know, in the grand scheme of things. Although certainly, again, selling it at 900 per liter was significantly better. So yeah, so this is the challenge too with potatoes, is even the turning radius on something like the quad track is a little bit challenged. So I think I'm going to be okay. Yep, we're good. But I am seriously thinking about getting an auger. So I'm likely going to do that, once again, just because the farm is the size it is. Everything here is kind of big farming. So I'm doing usually the largest thing I can do, and so I'll likely be getting the Hall Master, which is going to give me the biggest capacity, and we'll then be able to move things around pretty easily. But you can see we're already almost at 50%. I don't know, I'm still trying to see. So I may run this for a little while before I make the decision, because I'm already doing this a little hastily, where I'm just worried I may suddenly not be able to figure out where my potatoes go to help the Suez Canal project, and I'll just simply have grown potatoes to grow potatoes. But in the end, it's a crop I can sell, and at some point we'll figure it out, and then I'll have the capacity to grow potatoes and continue helping. So I'm going to leave it there for now as far as having you guys tag along. I've got a lot of work ahead of me, as you can see, and so I'm going to keep at it and make as much progress as I can and get this thing done in whatever time frame's allotted to me to get it done, and hopefully I can finish it up, because as you've seen, we've had some challenges where FMs have started to figure out this may be a little bit more difficult to farm given the crop calendar differences and so forth. The other benefit, before I do leave, that we do get with potatoes, which was one of the reasons I was thinking about that, because with the 2-day crop windows, my concern was, wow, if I've only got X amount of days, what about weather? Root crops can be harvested in the rain. So if it's like, basically this is weatherproof, I could do everything I need to do root crops, and I really don't care if it's raining, snowing, so forth. So I'll be able to do this, fertilize, and most importantly, harvest. So I will have the 2 days, and just whenever I can physically get to it in my time, I'll be able to do it. So that's why I felt comfortable going ahead and doing this, because I don't have to sit there and worry about, does it fall on a day where I'm going to have a dozen hours to work on it, because whenever I'm ready to go, as long as I feel I can churn out those hours, which at this point I've just committed myself by starting this to do that. And you know, my goal is definitely to get this whole thing harvested. It's just going to take quite a bit of time, because I think we're going to be unloading trucks. We're going to be unloading into trucks that can't be filled. So this is going to be a very different experience than planting root crops in FS19 was. And we'll deal with all the other pieces as we get to those areas, because obviously we're going to need a place to store them, so we're going to need a root cellar. We're going to need all kinds of things on the farm because of this Suez Canal project. So I'll see you in a bit. Alright, so I wanted to take a little bit of a break and get everybody up to date. So the planting I've done so far, and I've just basically determined it's easier to turn every other row than try to kind of line myself up, so I'm just going to go across and then come back. I did go to the far side of the field, so there's 102, well technically 103 because you start at 0 rows to plant. We've reset because I've changed tractors here, and I'll explain that in a second. So it shows +2 because I set my GPS line on the previous row. But you can see there I've got the case now attached to the Hallmaster auger so that we can just have large batches of seeds out here, because we're going to need that for potatoes, because at this point we've in essence used 24,000 seeds to get this far. So and we've got all that way to go, and we were basically, I think, like on row 17 or something. So while when I said we have 100, I mean it goes a long way that way. We're only like 20% of the way across the field. Granted, this is the long north-south area, like once we get there we'll shorten, but still taking a lot of potatoes. So that's the farm side of it. But I wanted to give you guys details, because for those who have never been involved in FSN, and even those of us that are, like, this group project thing is something brand new. So it's still in the process of getting set up, but basically let's start with the logistics of what's happening. So it's a group project at the Suez Canal, and it's listed as having a port of call of Alexandria, Egypt, and a job delivery site of Port Said, Egypt. So I'm assuming that's for boats and trucks to get products there. And again, since I'm not that familiar with the meta side, I can't really say more than that, but that'll mean something to the folks that are doing that work. And then as far as the quantity of items that we're talking about, this is just the preparation location. Alright, so for the project, we're in phase 1, which is preparation, and they've got phase stats listed, which are, we're going to need 120,000 containers shipped in, and therefore delivered as well, 24,000 bulldozers, 4,000 excavators, 40,000 dump trucks, 10,000 wheel loaders, 150 large generators, and 100 generators, 1,000 semis, 25 million initial fuel reserve, $1,200,000,000 in project fees, 20,000 temporary housing units, 20 million canned corns, 10 million bread, 2.5 million grape juice, 10 million Kernel Crunch, basically a cereal, 10 million milk, and 7,500,000 chips, which is what I believe my potatoes will be used for. Once again, because I don't understand the meta side of it and how that all works, like I've never done the mining or the boats or any of that. I've just done some things with trucks. I'm going to leave that up to the people on the entrepreneur side to deal with, and I'll just do my part as a farmer. But for information, in case you're interested, what we've been told is things to note. NPCs will no longer sell to buy orders for raw crops during the duration of the special project due to global shortages. NPCs will no longer deliver new equipment to Egypt due to overwhelming demand for the duration of the project. NPC gas stations have dried up in Egypt. You'll have to truck fuel in from across the border or fuel up at a player station. In a move to be equitable and fair to its citizens and visitors, Egypt has imposed a gas price cap to ensure there is no price gouging in the absence of state-ran stations. Remove the ability to deliver LE semis to Egypt for duration of special group project. And then with regard to shipping, project-generated loads for sea lanes or ground lanes will be generated and available for anyone at the departure location like any other normal NPC load. Credit applied to project upon delivery. Manufactured food items will be airlifted using player aircraft. Details on this mechanism available in near future. Temporary housing will be shipped via ground and sea lanes. And then we've obviously talked about the items that are required for this phase of the project. So that gives you as much information as I've got. For those who are listening to this who understand the meta side of FSN, maybe all that makes a lot more sense and you've got an idea of how that gets pulled off. But at this point on my end, I'm planting potatoes. and I'm talking to brokers and other people that I know play on that side who are participating to try to figure out, once I finally pull these things out of the ground, what I do with them. So hopefully over the next few days that'll all come together, and we'll keep going on the adventure together. So I'm going to get back to planting potatoes. I'll see you in a bit. So yeah, I thought I could make it to the end of the row and then go get gas. Guess I was wrong. So I'm trying to do this, which is push my tractor up to my diesel tank, which I'll get there eventually, but just needed to give you guys a little bit of a giggle. But you know, luckily the field is right here, so I'm not too terribly far away. The planter's like way back there, so I'm probably more than halfway through my fun here, and I'll just keep on going, trying to guide him where he needs to go. Kind of doing that. See you in a bit. So finishing up the potatoes here. So I've got a little less than 3 more passes to do, just filled up from the auger wagon. But I've been getting about 4 or 5 rows with a full 8,000 loads, so this will likely have something left, so we're then going to have to clean up at the end. So what I'm going to cover before we get done is just kind of where we're at, but also I will show you guys, because now we do have access to the Suez Canal project on the Entrepreneur's site. So I can show you what that looks like and how things are going, because I've been kind of impressed with just how quickly people have jumped on things, especially the project fees, which I figured would take forever to get taken care of. And last I looked, which was hours ago, we were over 60% done with the project fees. And I say we, meaning the community. I have barely any money on the meta side, so most of it is crops, and then most of it is used to fund the farm. And speaking of funding the farm, you can see I've got 3.4 million now. That is because we had a operations person come in, and if you remember, I said somebody bought that field. That person also bought field 4, but that person is not the farm manager that is joining us, which is what I thought it was. So we don't know who it is. And given that we're not allowed to have contractor farms on the server anymore, there shouldn't be anybody buying land on our server that isn't an FM, I believe, and that was somewhat what he was confused with as well, as he kind of said the same thing in chat, like, I don't know how they bought something if they're not an FM on the server. So might be something going on, but I'm sure they'll clear it up, and it's not like any of us were fighting for field 4 or field 10 anyway. So you know, even if it takes a while to get cleared up and get those fields rotating back in the auctions, I don't know that it will matter. So, but I have been kind of trying to keep this moving, along with doing other stuff that I need to do outside of this. So, I mean, there's certainly not been everything moving constantly, but you guys know when I started, and you see the server time here, and can obviously see that we're talking about 10, 11 hours ago. So this took a while, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little scared what the harvest is gonna look like, because typically, as we've seen, harvest is the longest thing that happens in the process, because the harvesters run a little slower. Now again, the harvester's still probably going to go 6 miles an hour, but I don't think it's working with is any bigger, And I think I made the comment that in the beginning that the capacity of that, the biggest harvester I can find for potatoes is 22,000. And if you've ever done potatoes on Farming Simulator, you know they yield a ton, which is why they take a lot of seed too. I mean, so you'll turn around and get a huge yield. I won't even begin to guess what we're going to be talking about here, but I think the largest individual root crop I ever planted, if you were with me in Seneca on Ohio for Misty Hills, I talked about that, but actually that wasn't on the video. That occurred before the video. We sold the root crops once I had started the series. But we had hundreds of thousands, and I think carrots, we may have had 700,000 liters, and that was just half of field 97, which is like a 25-acre field, so it was really like 12 acres. This is probably 60 acres of potatoes based on, again, taking away what we did on the survey on the north end, and at some point I'm going to do the same thing. I'll survey the edges of this field to get the measurements and kind of give myself a ballpark. Again, those islands will take out, I'm sure, a few acres, but I don't know that it's going to be substantial. Obviously this north one is pretty big. That south one is not so large. But I may kind of try to basically make those rectangles and just take them out of the number just to get me a decent ballpark. But let's just roughly say my guess is we're dealing with about 60 acres here. So that's 5 times that. So we may end up with like 3.5 million liters, assuming potatoes yield what carrots did. And I don't know if that's the case because I never actually planted potatoes on Misty Hills and harvested it myself. When I was a contractor, I've helped harvest potatoes for other people, but I wasn't tracking the data on their fields, so I don't know what the yield was. I just know it was a lot. And then the trailers, because they're bulky, can't be filled. So that's kind of the conversation I've been having with chat with the other FMs on the server, is what have I gotten myself into, because I think we're gonna basically maybe 1 or 2 harvesters full. Well, probably honestly 1, because there's no way we're going to get 44,000 liters in that 59,000 liter trailer. I don't know, maybe we'll get close, but I don't think so. So even if I do, it's 2 harvesters full, and once we start harvesting, we'll see. But I think we're going to be talking about at least 100, if not 200 loads full of the harvester. So that's a lot of potatoes. And again, the project needs a lot of potatoes. And I'm sure even with whatever I produce, it's going to be a fraction of the amount. Because basically, just like productions in FS22, to some degree, what they've created on the Entreprenaut site is similar to that, where you need X number of units of things to create. Sorry, I thought I hit the right button, but I didn't. Again, talking and trying to run controls at the same time, I think I've shown I'm not that great at that. So, anyway, last row. So yeah, but at this point, I will get it done in some way. I mean, unless it's physically impossible. If this turns out that, it turns out to be like 45 hours of harvesting or something, and I need to do it in 2 days, obviously that's not going to happen. So, then we'll be out what will be out, but we'll take a look and see. So at this point, this is the 13th load of seed in my potato planter. So at 8,000 per load, you can do the quick math, but we're likely at, over 100,000 liters of seed to plant this field. So it's definitely up there. Again, I haven't run it on my spreadsheet yet because I haven't gotten my final number, but I'll be putting that on and starting to grab my finances for those sections. So we'll see what it starts to look like. But that's the situation. You can see past there, that silver little building. Again, if you've played Farming Simulator, you know what it is, and if you know anything about farming, you probably know what it is too. That's our root crop cellar. So I did find a place in my trees where I could fit that in there. I am able to drive fully around it. I actually took this tractor with the planter around it just as I was doing the rows that came up to it. So I basically was heading north. I then drove around it to turn around and then run the next row on the field just to kind of test things out. It was obviously after it was already placed, but visually I definitely took my time before I put that on there. So that cost us about 200,000. Nothing's ever fully flat, so I think it was like 204,000 or something with the stuff it had to do to the land and so forth. But so that kind of took some of that away. Obviously, we also bought the Hallmaster, so that's why you're not, you're seeing the 3.4 million, but basically, obviously, we had the lower 2 millions when we kind of started this adventure, and then, as we've been buying some equipment, we're still up $1 million or so. So I don't know between everything if we really spent about 600,000, but it's pretty close. So. And some of that is obviously buying all the seed. The seed has a cost to it as well. So that's not all equipment and buildings either. But at this point, all I have bought other than equipment and buildings is the seed. And so we had a full 70,000 liters of seed that I had gotten over to begin with. We then put in about 32,000. Again, we don't have a fill limiter, so we weren't able to be exact, but close to that, knowing that I really would need about 2 loads. And again, obviously we've got a fraction of that here, so we've still got 3,550 left. You can see a couple times I ran past. Obviously we didn't do it too terribly bad, we just did it twice. One time my cruise got stuck, the other time was when the ops person was on and we were chatting about Crow Creek Ranch, trying to figure out who it was, and then I was out sending some direct messages to the FM that I thought it was, who then told me, nope, that's not the name I'm using. So, and I thought I had stopped my tractor, and obviously I had not, because I came back and that one ran, that was the second one, that one ran quite a ways into the other field. So, we'll collect stuff up because it'll grow, but obviously, we're not able to use the field for free per se, but we didn't plant the whole other field. So when we make mistakes like that, usually, we'll just harvest the little bit that's left. It'll, give us a few hundred liters at best, I'm sure, and, it's not like we're going to make a mint off of it. So I don't know why I'm going and doing this, because the likelihood of what I'm hoping can happening which is that it's going to let me dump the seeds right out of here into the silo. Of course not. But it was worth a shot. So while I'm here, though, I am going to go ahead and clean things up and repair things. So let me do that. So 3,700 on our tractor and 1,800 on our potato planter. And oh boy, is that thing dirty. That and the tractor, but we're putting those spuds in the ground, so. And I don't know anything about actual potato farming, so I don't know if you truly do use real potatoes and jam them in the ground, if that's how it works, or that's just how Farming Simulator displays them. But they're in the little cups there, you can see, ready to continue on, because obviously the planter's just a machine and it doesn't know we're done, and there are no little elves to come around and take the potatoes out of the cups and put them back, but it'll all work out. I promise no potatoes will have been hurt in the filming of this episode. So, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and unload on the field next to the auger wagon. I'll pick it up in the auger wagon, which I should be able to do. I've not tried that with the Hall Master here in FS22, but I've certainly done that with other auger wagons, so I really have no reason to believe that that's not going to be possible. Interesting. I'm hitting the key to let me do that, but it's not unloading, so I may not be able to. Like once they're in, huh? Guess it's good we own the planter, because at least we're not, and I assume it has nothing to do with me being folded, but I'll unfold just to be sure. So, alright, yeah, the ridge markers showed up, but nothing that lets me unload. I assume, I don't know that I want to try this, but nope, Control I doesn't work either. So, in any event, we've got 3,550 liters of potatoes ready to go for if and when we ever do anything else with potatoes. So, gotta figure out where I'm gonna put this. I mean, at this point, I can kind of put it anywhere. What I'm thinking of doing as well is I'm gonna play around in the yard a bit, and I'm gonna see if I can find another place for another shed, a smaller one. I don't need one this big. But with the new seeder that I'll get, and then we're ultimately going to have a planter, I've got to be able to put some of these other pieces of equipment somewhere, because, and I can obviously just park them around. There's nothing that stops me from doing that, other than just trying to not be a pig in my yard. But, I'm hoping there's some places, and it might be behind the house or whatever, that I can put in a small 3-4 bay shed and maybe get, the sprayer, the roller, put those kind of things in there, and then leave, basically those 4 implements that I have in there even would work, and then I could just pull the planter and the seeder straight through, and the potato harvester might just be sitting out in the field somewhere. So let me park this tractor. I don't need that anymore right now, so we'll just kind of line that up here. Yeah, I feel like an idiot for running out of gas, but it's also learning the game a bit. So I knew I was getting really low. I could obviously see the gauge. But I honestly thought the gauge would go completely empty before it would actually run out of fuel. But it actually left kind of a little circle of red, which well, you probably didn't see in the little snippet of video I showed of me pushing it with the case, because I was in the case, obviously. I wasn't in the Massey Ferguson. So I was like, well, yeah, I can definitely come up and back, and then I'll just, drop the potato planter in the field, and I'll go get fuel and I'll come back. That was my plan, and obviously that didn't work. So, anyway, it is what it is, but that's how that happened. So it wasn't that I wasn't paying attention, I just wasn't able to do what I needed. Is this not going to let me? Oh, okay. Gotta open the cover. I forgot. FS22 is very finicky about that. So there we go. So get our seed into the seed silo. It's still obviously a little goofy with FS mechanics. See, but I don't know. I really can't get behind my house without... I'm trying to avoid having to take out any more trees. I would kind of like to leave things alone if I could. So, I was thinking like where I have the rock picker, where I just put the potato planter, I can just pull the potato harvester in there when I have it. That was kind of the thing. And then, it's just a matter of figuring out other things. But if I can't get to the shed, that's not going to help, because in theory I could probably throw one up here, and in that case, as I think about that, I may want to get this out of here, because obviously then it's going to be in the way. So maybe I'll just put this on the road for now, somewhere where I know I can't put a shed, and then we'll figure out what we're doing, because again, the Hallmaster can go in the bigger shed once I'm done with that. At this point, we've got everything planted. I'm going to go get that information, but before I sign off for this episode, let me show you what we've got with the Suez project. Alright, so what they did is when we log in to any of the sites, we kind of get to this home page. They've added this group project Suez Canal button, which is how we get to it. And so we can see kind of the information I gave you of all the things we need. And so you can see we've got 6 of the 24,000 bulldozers. We're already up to 15 of the 4,000 excavators. Wow, dump trucks have definitely gone up. I don't think there were any. So we have 108. But you can see we've got over $1 billion of the project fees. So it's gone up substantially more. There's 5 medium generators, 25 of the 1,000 semis. And then I think these are all production items that need to be made. So I know some people are making the bottled milk already. Someone said they had like 7 production lines running. Again, I know nothing about that side of Meta, so I don't know what the timing is. But obviously this is how we keep track of how things are going. So I was expecting everything to kind of really slowly creep up. As you can see, we can't even see a status bar here with the 58 wheel loaders. We've got a sliver of green, obviously with only needing 100 medium generators. The bar's substantial, but this is pretty good here. So and you can kind of see it's got this dark view or dark theme, so it is intentional that it kind of looks that way. So, but you can see, they contributed a medium generator. Someone gave $1.5 million in funds toward the project fees. So they get shares at the end of the phases, I think. I'm not sure that we have to wait until the whole project is done, but once again, I don't know the details. So when people are putting this money in, they're in essence buying shares of the Suez Canal, which then, when the Suez Canal is operational, my understanding is then they will get some of those proceeds of the profits that the canal makes from charging fees for ships to go through. So that's what's going on, and that's how we've progressed so far. And at this point, this group project is less than 24 hours old. It's probably honestly less than 8 hours. Well, it might be more than 8 hours old. Again, it took me forever to plant these potatoes, but it's probably certainly less than 12 hours old. I know that, that we've had access to it and been able to send things there. So, definitely on the profit side, or project fee side, definitely an awesome start. So that's where we're at, and I'll see you next time.